The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kendall Trump with Grain Journal Magazine in Decatur, Illinois. Welcome to Understanding and Managing Generations. This is the eighth in a series of webinars to be presented by GEAPS and Grain Journal Magazine in 2019. Today's webinar is sponsored by M&M Specialty Services. M&M specializes in protecting your people and your products with the best in quality and affordability in personal protection products, grain protectants, fumigants, and services. They are based in Leavenworth, Kansas. Our webinar is also sponsored by VAA LLC, who has provided engineering and design services in the agribusiness industry since its founding in 1978. Working with owners, equipment vendors, and design build contractors, the firm specializes in bulk commodity handling facilities, including slipform design, material handling, transportation, and export. They are based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Our presenter today is Carlie Crouch. Carlie is a human resource professional with over 5 years of experience in the learning and development field. In her current role, Crouch is responsible for managing the L&D side of the Operations Management Trainee Program and creating content for salaried training programs. You can participate in today's Q&A session by typing your questions into the questions box at the right-hand side of your screen at any time during our presentation. We will be addressing your questions during the Q&A session following our presentation. We do have two brief polling questions for you today. First, how many people are viewing at your facility? And next, are you a GEAPS member? Thank you for your participation. As a note, today's webinar is being recorded and it will be posted to our website, grainnet.com, within 24 hours. All registrants will also receive an email containing a link to the recording the day following the presentation. At this time, Carlie, can you please do a voice check?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. And now,
Thank you for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is Carlie Crouch.
So, hi, everyone. Thank you for taking some time today to learn about different generations in the workplace. This is a really, really popular topic for lots of different organizations. In my own organization that I work for at Perdue, it's something that we're dealing with on a daily basis in all of our locations. Especially when it comes to operations-based environments, where you're in manufacturing, be it grain, poultry, pork, beef, all of those types of things. And some of your generational differences are huge. You have folks that, remember what it was like to do things by hand, working with some of your newer associates who everything is done on computers, and then you've got all these other folks that kind of fit in between. So the first thing that I would like for us to look at is the four main generations in the workplace today. There is some of them are kind of on their way out, but the first one that typically we'll have in work environments are traditionalists. So those are folks that were born between 1920, 1946. Currently, they make up about 3% or less of most organizations' workforce. Then you have your baby boomers, 1946 to 1964. Gen X, which is 1965 to 1976. And then Millennials, which is 1977 to 1997. Now, these dates are approximate, depending upon where you research, you'll see a little bit of fluctuation, but it is interesting to note. I always joke, kind of when you turn on the news or you read articles, people are always talking about the millennials and they need safe spaces and they might cry and all this kind of stuff. And actually, the oldest millennials are like 40, 41 now, so not necessarily quite as young as everyone thinks. There actually is a fifth generation that I am going to talk about later on. That is called Gen Z. And they're the folks that are just now coming into the workforce. Last time I checked, probably about a month ago in my own company, we have 20,000 associates across our business. And we had 280 folks that fit into that category. Most of them are just now turning 18. So from an operations-based environment, we don't really have a whole lot of folks that are under 18 in roles. So in order to understand different generations that you're dealing with, you have to go back and look at what did this generation experience in their formative years when they were, young adults. So the first one that we're going to look at is traditionalist. So for a lot of you, this could even be your parents' generation, your grandparents' generation. This is the one that, they were known as the silent generation. They were born during the Great Depression or World War II. Those of you, if you think back to your parents, grandparents, they're the ones that, if something was broke, you fixed it. You didn't go out and buy a new one, you fixed it. They're the ones that, I walked 5 miles to school uphill in the snow. They were also very, very loyal to their workplace. They're the associates that went to a workplace and stayed there for 35, 40, 45 years. They wanted to get that gold watch. They wanted to collect that pension. That was kind of the light at the end of the rainbow. They prefer to keep their heads down, mouth closed, slow and steady progress. Eventually, I will become manager, or eventually I will get to retire. And they kind of instilled those values into their children. Like I said, they currently make up less than 3% of the total U.S. workforce. However, you might want to, hopefully after this webinar, if you never have, examine your workforce, because at my company, while they only make up 3% of the U.S. workforce, we actually have close to 10% still in our workplace population, and a lot of them are in roles that are tough to fill. For example, machinists. We have an abundance of traditionalists that are actually in machinist roles, and it's because they know how to do things that some of the younger generations don't. So the next one that I want us to look at is baby boomers. So this is typically 1946 to 1964 is when they were born. I'm also going to give you guys a term. It's called cuspers. So if you are at the beginning or the end of a generation, you're what we would call a cusper. So you kind of fall one way or the other. And baby boomers currently make up about 30% of the U.S. workforce. And their aging is going to change America. Part of it is because healthcare reasons. The other part of it is because they're going to retire in great numbers and quickly, potentially. So just to give you some statistics, while they currently only make up 30% of the U.S. workforce, in certain pockets, it's a lot higher. For example, CDL truck drivers. Average age of a CDL driver is between 52 and 55 years old. That's tough. And it is very, very hard to hire drivers right now. You have tons of companies competing for the same labor force. For myself, for Perdue Agribusiness, 55% of our CDL drivers are baby boomers. And if they want to, they can retire in the next 3 to 5 years. So this group, born during civil rights, Vietnam War, they saw people land on the moon. They place a high value on success. They're achievement oriented, and so they historically are the ones who, we talk about work-life balance, and we're going to talk about that later. So baby boomers are the ones that put a huge emphasis on advancement and achievement, and it caused them to work long hours. So this is kind of where we see that start of maybe I don't have the best work-life balance. And most of these folks occupy most executive management roles today. Succession planning is something that you have to talk about when you look at generations, and it's because of baby boomers. For example, for us at Perdue, 40% of our director level and above associates, so directors, vice presidents, senior vice presidents, 40% of them are baby boomers and can retire in the next 3 to 5 years. We have to have a plan of if they were to exit, how do we fill that knowledge base? That's something that you might want to look at. If they decide, hey, tomorrow I'm going to retire in the next 3 months, do I have someone that can fill that role? Because chances are that person's probably going to take a lot of knowledge with them. The other thing with baby boomers is that they aren't retiring necessarily at the rate that maybe their parents did. Hey, once I do 30 years at a company, I'm going to retire. A lot of it has to do with people living longer, health insurance costs, things like that. But just be mindful that just because you think somebody is getting ready to retire may not necessarily be the case. Next generation we're going to look at is Gen X. So these are folks born between 1965 and 1976. They currently make up 33% of the U.S. workforce. So it's interesting, only 3% more than baby boomers. And part of this is because during this generation, most females who had been stay-at-home moms in previous generations went back to work. And that's how they got that terminology, the latchkey kids generation, because these folks came home from school, let themselves into the house. Mom was at work, dad was at work. You see family size go down during this generation. Instead of having 5 or 6 kids, people only had 2 or 3. And so they are born during Watergate, resignation of President Nixon, the oil embargo. When I've done this class live, we talk about how, and I'm a millennial, an older millennial, but things like having set days that you had to get gas on. I can't even imagine that now. But during this generation, that was something that they had to deal with. And again, first generation to grow up where predominantly both parents worked. And that has caused Gen Xers to become extremely independent, especially in the workplace. The other interesting thing, this is the generation where we start to see, for lack of a better term, job hopping. So baby boomers and traditionalists, they stayed at a company once they got in 30 plus years. Gen X, on average, is going to change jobs at least 7 times during their career. This whole notion of loyalty to a company, in a sense, goes out the window, because with this generation and their entry into the workforce kind of in the early 2000s, that's when we saw pensions and retirement benefits go away for companies. So for them, why am I going to stay with one company if there's no, light necessarily at the end of the tunnel? Not all of them think like that, but again, on average, they're going to change a job 7 times. Next generation, we're going to look at a joke. It's like the generation everyone loves to hate right now, and it's the Millennials, so 1977 to 1997. It is interesting to note, though, there is a difference between a millennial that was born between about 1977 and 1987, 88. Those folks grew up kind of before cell phones, internet, all of that became something that people had in their houses all the time. So I would like to just point that out. Currently, they make up about 34% of the U.S. workforce, but by 2020, it's going to be 50%. Also known as Gen Y, and it's interesting to note, and personally, this is a low ball figure, but on average, student loan debt for these associates is about, for these folks, is about $35,000 and up. It's nothing for some of these folks to have $75,000 to $100,000 in student loan debt. So they're born, rise to computer, internet, terrorism. It's interesting to note the millennial generation is also our most educated generation in history, and part of it is because for a lot of them, when they maybe graduated college with their bachelor's, it was during the recession, and they delayed entry into the workforce. They went back to school and got a master's degree, which was great on one hand, but on the other hand, added to their student loan debt. To them, work is a means to an end. It's tough. They have a hard time sitting and waiting for things. They want to move up the ladder now rather than later. It's a generation, think about this. Some of you maybe that aren't millennials, when you needed to get information, you went to the library, you went and found an encyclopedia. I can remember getting the gift of encyclopedias for Christmas at a young age. Some of your millennials who are, 22, 23, 24 right now, they've never had to worry about that. They've had Google at their fingertips and had instant information. And that's what they want in the workplace. It's what they've grown up with. So the last generation that I want to kind of talk about before we get into some of the additional information is Gen Z. So this is this new generation. They're born in 1998, kind of on down. This generation hasn't necessarily ended yet. They're starting to enter in the workforce in the next few years. Again, these are your folks that are like 18, 19 years old, so you may not really have any yet. But it's the all about me generation. So they have never known a world without cell phones or computers. And that's crazy to think about. They've also witnessed their parents go through a recession. They may have had to move because, their parents lost a house that went into foreclosure. They've seen their parents not be able to get jobs. And with this generation, it's interesting. They're kind of similar to baby boomers. We're seeing a rise in tech school and community college because they've seen the stigma of student loan debt and they don't want to be in student loan debt. And we are starting to see a resurgence, which is great, in trade schools. It's also interesting to note that this generation, they're looking for their employers to help them with things like education, tuition reimbursement. That's one of the really big things that when you survey some of the ones that are getting ready to get out of college, that's what they want to know. Hey, do you have student loan repayment? Do you have a management training program? Will you help me pay to go back to school to get a master's degree? Things like that. So let's look for a minute at preferred management styles. Because one of the things when it comes to generations, you can't necessarily manage everyone the same way. People have different expectations, need different things. I'm going to kind of work backwards. So if we look at the millennials, which is the one that, everyone seems to have a hard time figuring out, when they were surveyed, and they said that they prefer to have a manager who acts as a coach or a mentor. So they want somebody to help them navigate the workplace. A lot of that is attributed to millennials and them playing sports, and how that's such a big emphasis on that coaching nature. I want to know I have someone in my corner. I want to know I've got someone that if I have a problem, I can go to them. And it's not just that I see my manager during my yearly review, that they're actually play an active role in teaching me my job. Then if we move back, you have your Gen Xers who've been in the workforce a good bit now. So they prefer someone who's typically flexible and is going to allow them their own discretion to complete their job. So millennials, they kind of want your help. They sometimes need guidance. Gen Xers want you to tell them what to do and then leave me alone to do it. Remember, they're typically very independent in the workplace. Then we get to baby boomers, because they're looking for a manager who is ethical, fair, and consistent. Hey, just because I'm older, don't treat me any different than anyone else. And typically they're going to like group interaction a little bit more than Gen X. Gen X, remember, is very independent. And then traditionalists, if you do so have some of those in your workforce, strong leader, tell me what you want done, and then just know I've been here long enough. I know how to do it. Don't try and change the way that I necessarily do things. So I want to talk about some of these generational clash points where we see these ages causing, some tension within groups. The first one is easy. It's technology. You have your millennials and then your Gen Z coming in, and they're on their cell phones constantly. Everything's IM or instant messaging, email. I think some of them don't even know how to write sometimes anymore because they just aren't used to how to write things down. Technology is a huge clash point for different generations, and you just have to manage your expectations. If you don't want people bringing cell phones into meetings, tell them, hey, sorry, can't bring your cell phone into a meeting. If it's a safety sensitive thing, we have that where you can't have your cell phone because it is OSHA regulation, USC regulation, those type of things. Tell them. Younger generations, millennials, they don't understand that. They've been able to bring their phones to school since they were in elementary school, so why shouldn't I be able to do that at work? Another thing when it comes to technology that I like to bring up is it factors into work-life balance, and it's the fact that people are accessible 24/7. If you have a work cell phone, you can contact them at all hours. Be mindful of that, and that's across all generations. People are feeling like they don't have a chance to unplug from work. Gen X, they're going to be fine with technology. Where you're going to start to see your different generations having issues is around baby boomers. They might be reluctant to technology. One of our major issues that we'll sometimes see is that you pair up a millennial with a baby boomer and tell the millennial, oh, I need you to teach this this old guy how to use our new technology. You've done nothing more than create a huge wall between the two of them. So just be mindful of that. Don't pick on a different generation just because they don't like technology, aren't necessarily as up to date as other generations. Another big clash point is work-life balance. And people want to say work-life balance. Honestly, anymore, it's very hard to find a balance between work and life. But it's just being mindful that you're going to see younger generations coming in that they want to be able to work remote. They want to be able to work different hours. In an operations environment, that's tough. We just can't necessarily do that. So you have to offer them other things in place of that. So that's where you're looking at these management training programs where they are paired up with a mentor. They're paired up with people who have been in the company for a while. They're offered lots of training opportunities. And if you can, give them time. If they want to go work on a community project, we have ones where they clean up waterways around some of our different locations, go work at a food bank. It might be taking time away from work, but your younger generations, that's important to them. Community involvement is something that they want to see, and if it's not going to take away too much from work, what's wrong with allowing them to do it? Also, it's being mindful of your older generation to remember what it was like to not have email and a work cell phone. And if someone's going on vacation, unless it's something major, let them go on vacation. One thing that you're seeing with some of your older generations is burnout, and it's because they're constantly attached to their devices. Third big generational clash point is training. So it's one thing, you have some folks that think, hey, we don't need training. And then some of your younger folks coming in, they want to learn everything. Even if it's not their job, they want to do job shadowing. They want to know how everything works. If they ask a lot of questions, try not to get frustrated. It's that whole idea of I need to know everything. I have Google at my fingertips. I want to know the inner workings of how things work at my company. They're not necessarily trying to question authority. They're just trying to figure out how things work. The training is huge. Like I said, especially the new generation coming in, Gen Z, they want to know that there are learning and development opportunities, that I can go back to college and get some financial assistance to pay for that, or I can go get certified in Six Sigma, OSHA regulations, a Sherman HR certification. They just want to know that that's important to the company, that my growth and development. Because typically what we see when folks leave companies, and remember, Gen X, 7 different times they're going to change their job over the course of their career. It's because they feel like they aren't growing anymore, that they're not learning anything, that they're stagnant. So just be mindful of that. So I'm going to turn it over to Kendall, because hopefully you guys maybe have some questions that you would like for me to answer.
Thank you so much for a great presentation today, Carlie. This does conclude the presentation portion of today's event. We will now begin our Q&A session. If you have not yet submitted your questions, please do so at this time. Okay, Carlie, our first question today. What do you think is the biggest challenge facing millennials and Gen Z workers in the job field?
So that is a great question. So I think one of the biggest challenges for them is this whole notion that while Google and Amazon are really cool, they can't employ everyone. And not every company is going to be like that. And understanding that there's really great benefits of going in and working for an ag company and getting your hands dirty at work, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's one of the biggest struggles. Social media has taught people think about this perfect work life and what they see posted online, when in reality, that's not really what work is like.
Okay, our next question. How can the millennials best navigate a workplace made up primarily of traditionalists and baby boomers?
So great question. That is one of our issues in my own workplace. It's a huge split. We have like a donut hole. Lots of baby boomer and traditionalists. Not really a whole lot of Gen X. More millennials. Having a great mentor program can really help you. But when I say having a great mentor program, I don't mean just arbitrarily going up to someone who's been at the company for 30 years and saying, hey, we have this new girl, Carlie, who's coming to work for us. You're going to mentor her because you've been here forever. You need to get buy-in from your baby boomer traditionalist associates. If they don't want to mentor, it's fine. Don't make them. You'll honestly make the relationship worse.
Okay, next. Are we seeing many conflicts in the workplace appearing between millennials and Gen Z workers?
So I have not necessarily heard of too many conflicts. However, one of the things is that can be a potential conflict is the student debt issue. So millennials, man, they racked up some charges, and Gen Ed, Gen Z, the newer generation, they've kind of been a little bit smarter about it. So that's one of the areas that you'll see some conflict come up.
Okay, thank you. That is all that we have for questions today. I want to thank everyone for their participation. And that is all that we have for our webinar today. I want to go ahead and thank our sponsors, M&M Specialty Services and VAA LLC, for their support in bringing you today's webinar. And I also want to thank GEAPS and our presenter, Carlie Crouch, for joining us today. GEAPS provides the best networking in education and professional development for all levels of experience in the industry. So where can GEAPS help you? To start, they can enhance education through online training, local meetings, and events. You can expand your network of colleagues, industry leaders, and create new friendships. Meet people that can help you. It connects you with 26 chapters across North America. Industry leaders and experts are only a call or a click away. Learn more about what GEAPS can do for you by visiting jeeps.com/membership. And as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and it will be available for viewing on graynet.com within 24 hours. All registrants will also receive an email containing a link to our webinar recording. Our next webinar will be held on Tuesday, October 15th at 2 p.m. Central Time. Emily Whitcomb of the National Safety Council will be discussing how tired is too tired, how fatigue is impacting your business. I want to thank everyone for attending today, and I want to wish you all a great day.